Hello everybody, this is Skarest, going to bring you a little bit of an update on the Brawlers Guild. What I want to take a look at is some of the recent news that Blizzard has released on the Brawlers Guild, tell you exactly what's going on with it, give my opinion on it, all that kind of fun stuff. So, some people may be aware, some people may not be aware, but what Blizzard has decided to do is how you actually gain access to the Brawlers Guild is through invitation only. Now to begin with, there's only one way to get an invitation, and that is through the black market auction house, in which you will be buying a blood-soaked invitation. Now, if you're not familiar with the black market auction house, basically how it works is that there is a time limit on the bids. The bids can go all the way up to the gold cap. At the gold cap, you can't bid any higher, so whoever made that bid is going to ultimately win the item. It randomly puts different items on there of various degrees of rarity, from anywhere from just some old type of gear that may not be accessible to the ashes of a Lar, or in this case a blood-soaked invitation. The other way that you can gain access is someone who is already in the Brawlers Guild, so they've already gotten that blood-soaked invitation, can invite people in. And I'm assuming if you're invited, then you can also invite people in. How many people they can invite, how often they can invite, do they continue to get the ability to invite and does it reset, or is it, hey, you can invite 4 people or 5 people and that's it ever? I don't know. Blizzard hasn't come out and said yet, so we're going to have to see how that works. There's been a couple blue posts about it. I'm going to go ahead and tell you what those have to say before I go into what my opinion dealing with this is. First thing was someone was asking, why put the Brawlers Guild Pass on the black market auction house? Now I'll never see it because I hate the black market auction house. The experience won't be good if thousand players hit the brawls when the patch drops. We need to ramp up slowly, but will ramp up. From what I've seen, it's not instance. You literally have to wait in line for your turn. Hope I'm wrong. It is not instance. Obviously, my video has already shown you guys that. We have plenty of instance content. We want these to have spectators. And what it means when it's not instance, not the fact that you have to not enter an instance to get into it. At least with the Horde side you have to. It's mainly just referring to the fact that you're not going to be separated from the rest of the group. And everyone is, you're going to be in your own zone, like when you enter a 5-man, where, 100 different 5-mans can all be in that same 5-man dungeon at the same time. You guys have no interaction with each other. Seems like a design failure. Shouldn't have to bow and scrape to the 1% endgame to see content. Not a good feels. I expect everyone who wants to brawl will be able to, just not the day the patch goes live. Slow down, as the Pandaren says. Or as the Pandarens say. Okay, let's go over a few things here dealing with my opinion on this and what I think Blizzard needs to do. First thing, when it comes to gating the content, because that is literally what they're doing, and probably one of the most extreme versions of gating I've ever been able to see, where they're just blatantly saying, we are not going to allow everyone access to this right now. We're going to allow some people access to this. I'm fine with gating content. I don't have a big issue with that. I understand Blizzard's need to do it. Blizzard's been doing it since time immemorial at this point in time. If you ever look at how your content is generally gated, your leveling content is gated by level. You can't go and do Jade Forest when you're level 80. You have to be level 85. You can go possibly and get into Jade Forest, have someone summon you in or something like that, but everything's going to kill you, and there's no quest for you to do. So you're gated by that. We have gates in raids, obviously. You can't do heroic until you do the normals, which is always a bit amusing, because if you ever watch it, especially with our world first races, the first week basically doesn't matter. Oh, so-and-so guild got the first clear on normal. None of them care. They'll get, all the guilds will get to it when they get to it. It's not that big of a deal, figuring they can only run it once that week, what day they get it on, as long as they know they're ready for heroics the following Tuesday or Wednesday, depending if you're in the US or the EU. So there's not a big concern with that type of gating. It's a normal, we expect it. ICC had some pretty horrible gating, in my opinion, with the idea of literally just saying, here's 4 bosses in this massive dungeon, you're not moving any further. How they're working with the dungeons work up in MoP, in my opinion, does work better when it comes to the raids, of separating the raids themselves out and making that you do the earlier raid before you can get into the higher raid. No problem with that type of gating content. Even PvP content is gated in a sense, and it's gated a bit by skill and by gear. If you want to get into the top echelon of PvP arena players, yeah, you're going to have to run battlegrounds. You're going to have to do your arena at the lower levels so you can get the gear. You're not getting into the top echelons and being one of the top PvP players there are running around in crafted PvP gear. You're going to have to get that higher level gear unless you happen to just be immensely better at PvP than I am, which I'll be honest with y'all, probably just about every person out there is better at PvP than I am. Not a skill that I have in any way. So gating is common in WoW at this point in time. It's been accepted. I have no problem with it. However, I do have a problem with how they've chosen to gate this. In all the examples that I just listed, you are gated by the content you're wanting to play. You are gated from running a heroic dungeon by a normal dungeon. Your PvE heroic dungeon running is gated by PvE rating. Your leveling content running is gated by leveling content. Your PvE content, or your PvP content, is still gated by having to do the lower PvP content to get that higher gear before you can eventually get to the point where, no, all I do is I run my arenas that I need to run at the higher level. This is all gated by the equivalent type of content. The Brawlers Guild is a PvE solo content that is being gated by an auction house. There's no correlation between the two. There's no relation between the two. In fact, if you happen to be on a PvP guild, you're being content gated not just by a auction house, but by a massive amount of PvP, because people are going to fight. People are going to want to get in contests. You're going to sit there and you're going to kill the people who are bidding on the items that you want and things of that nature. Blizzard actually wanted that to happen with the Black Market Auction House, to open up maybe just a little bit of world PvP. Well, that's now going to open up. So that's what you're being content gated by. That makes no sense in my opinion. To me, it just seems that Blizzard is wanting to sit there and say, hey, our Black Market Auction House isn't nearly as popular. And I'm not surprised if it's not, because in my opinion, it serves no real function. I understand their goal is to get gold out of the economy. They need to just work on how much gold enters into the economy for nothing. If they work on that problem instead, and work on keeping inflation down instead of sitting there and trying to give more ways to spend money, because that's ultimately never going to work out, because you can only have so much where you're eventually going to get to the point where where people always complain and cry about this 1% type of concept. It's going to eventually get to the point where it literally becomes, oh, you want to be able to fly in whatever the new zone is? Well, that's going to cost you gold cap. So their main goal needs to be to lower inflation, not increase things that people are going to spend, because a lot of your high-end gold earners, that's the game for them. They're not going to spend money on these odd items. They're not that concerned with it. And if they do, it's a one-off thing. If they happen to see, oh, Ashes of Alar is up, and Ashes of Alar cost me 400,000 gold. Well, from the people who I know who are the serious gold makers, it doesn't take them long to make that 400,000 gold back. It's not a process or a big deal for them. That gold re-enters into the economy with no real issue. So they need to have a way to actually lower the amount of gold coming into the economy, not increase the amount of gold that's exiting. That would be at least in my opinion, the main thing that they end up having to do at that point in time. So they're trying to boost up the use of this black market auction house. I don't agree with them wanting to do it this way. You're not being gated by content that makes sense to the content you're trying to access. And that's the first time Blizzard's done that. It just really doesn't make sense. So Blizzard has to sit there, in my opinion, and I believe they will. I don't think this is going to go live. I may be wrong. God knows I don't know everything about what Blizzard's thinking. But they have to find a way to gate the content in a way that makes sense. Make it a random world drop, or a random drop in one of the dailies or something of that nature. That makes sense to me. That way you can have a bit of control over it and things of that nature. Now, one thing they may also be able to do to help lower down the amount of issues people are having, and the amount of questions people are raising on it, is they need to come out and sit there and explain the invitation system. How much or how many people are you able to invite? Is it going to reset over time? Is this just a flat, you can only invite this number of people? And when you invite one of these people, do they have those same type of invites? How many do they have? All that kind of fun stuff. Because it won't help at all if, for example, if they're trying to gate the content this way and they come out and say, hey, you can invite, you have unlimited invites, or you have 5 invites, but the people you invite immediately also have 5 invites. Because what will happen is that I happen to be in an extremely large guild that has a lot of gold that they can spend. Well, if we're able to at that point in time, and this leaves my thought, that we have more than enough to make sure we buy a blood-soaked invitation, that we get that blood-soaked invitation, say I'm the one who actually receives the item. So I invite 5 people from the guild into it. Now all of a sudden, instead of just 1 person in there, there's 6 people in there. Those 6 people invite their 5 people. We're now at 31 people in there. All of a sudden, you have a lot of people in there extremely, extremely quickly. So that does not work in that case. So with the invitation system, they're going to have to limit it. There's no way they can avoid that. Or the whole entire idea of the blood-soaked invitation does not work. And then the other big issue being, of course, the fact that on servers where you don't have more altruistic people, where like in my guild, yes, we would definitely be going around and making sure we're inviting everyone in the guild who wants to possibly be in the Brawlers Guild. You're going to have those one places where someone snags this thing up, they pay 100,000 gold for it, and they start yelling, hey, I got 5 invites to the Brawlers Guild, 50,000 gold apiece. It doesn't really work for me all that well. Just the way they're gating the content doesn't make sense to the relation of the content that's being gated. You're being gated by an auction house for PvE solo content, when every other type of gating that happens in this game has always been gated by content that makes sense to its gate. So that's something they're definitely going to have to, in my opinion, address, fix. They cannot go live with that usage there. Well, folks, that's going to do it for me today. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything of that nature, I ask you to go ahead and leave them in the comment section below. Otherwise, folks, I do ask you to like and favorite the videos. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. All that kind of fun pizzazz. Folks, keep on gaming.